Have you ever had someone in charge take their power way too far, only to end up trapping themselves in their own mess? I still remember the day like it was yesterday. I just returned home from a long day at work, the golden hues of sunset painting the sky, when I noticed something terribly unusual outside my house. You see, I've always prided myself on being the model neighbor. My lawn was impeccably maintained. My home always looked welcoming, and I made sure every little rule of our planned community was followed to the letter. That all changed the moment our new HOA president, Karen Wilkerson, took over. And trust me, once Karen stepped into the picture, everything turned upside down. It all began subtly at first. I'd lived in our charming subdivision for over 4 peaceful years, never giving a second thought to the rules until Karen's arrival. With a background that, let's say, seemed more suited to corporate boardrooms than neighborhood affairs, she quickly asserted her power. In her perfectly pressed white capri pants and pastel blouse, always with a pair of designer sunglasses perched just so on her nose, she transformed our once friendly HOA meetings into theatrical displays of control. At first, I wondered if it was just her style, but soon, the changes became all too real. One spring day, I decided to enhance my backyard with a small, serene water feature, a modest pond with a gentle waterfall that would not only beautify my home, but also add a sense of calm and tranquility to the entire neighborhood. Following every rule to the letter, I submitted detailed plans to the HOA. The bylaws clearly stated that if no response was given within 30 days, my project would be considered approved. True enough, 31 days passed without a word, and I happily began construction with licensed professionals, securing all the necessary permits from the city. The end result was nothing short of a small masterpiece, a soothing oasis that my neighbors even complimented on. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, there was a knock on my door. Standing there was none other than Karen herself, her face as tight and determined as ever. "Hello, James," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, holding a manila folder like it contained the most critical state secrets. In a clipped tone, she informed me that my water feature was an unauthorized landscaping project. I politely reminded her of the bylaws. If there's no response in 30 days, the request is automatically approved. But Karen produced a printed email dated exactly 29 days after my submission, claiming that my request had been denied. My mind raced. I'd never seen any email from the HOA, and despite my careful checks in every folder, there was nothing in my inbox. The timing was far too convenient, and her insistence that I'd simply missed the email reeked of ulterior motives. With a calm demeanor masking my growing frustration, I requested to see the HOA's email server log, a right guaranteed under Section 8 of our bylaws. Karen's smile faltered ever so slightly before she quickly assured me that the secretary would send the logs. But that was only the beginning of her misadventures with power. The very next day, as if by some cruel twist of fate, I received another violation notice, this time about my side driveway. According to this new rule, driveways were only allowed to connect to the main road, not to any side streets. But this was ludicrous. My house, uniquely built with a corner lot featuring a wraparound driveway, had always had dual access, something that was even part of the original community design. I recalled the conversation with a longtime resident who had been on the original development committee. He confirmed that corner lots were specifically meant to have dual access to ease traffic and improve convenience. Yet Karen dismissed my concerns in the next HOA meeting with a careless wave of her hand, declaring that the board had reinterpreted the rule. Side street access driveways create traffic hazards and detract from the community aesthetic, she claimed with an air of authority. Soon enough, it wasn't just me facing this absurd ruling. Neighbors with similar driveways began receiving notices too, and I could see the mounting tension in our once friendly community. I decided then that I wouldn't let this stand without a fight. I formally appealed the decision, a right granted to every homeowner, which meant I was entitled to a full hearing before the board. Unfortunately, the hearing turned out to be a sham. It was painfully clear that Karen had influenced the other board members, and the vote came out 4-1 against me, with only Bill Henderson, a retired lawyer and longtime board member, voicing his dissent. After the meeting, Bill pulled me aside in the parking lot and whispered, "This isn't right. Karen's turning this place into her personal kingdom. Keep documenting everything." And so, I did just that. I began meticulously recording every interaction with the HOA. Every email, every meeting, every notice, I saved it all, documenting dates, and even taking photos of my property to capture the changes before and after each incident. Little did I know, my diligence would soon become my greatest asset. As the months passed, Karen's actions escalated. The fines for my water feature and driveway violations piled up, yet I stubbornly refused to pay them, confident that the truth was on my side. And then came the day that would change everything, the day Karen made a move so audacious that it would ultimately be her undoing. I returned home one afternoon after a rare day of working off-site, only to find a construction crew installing fence posts along the edge of my property. I rushed outside, and my heart sank as I realized they were erecting a fence that completely blocked my side driveway. My property had legal access to the street, a feature that had been part of the home's design for years, yet now, Karen was using it as leverage to force me into compliance with her ridiculous demands. I confronted the foreman, who showed me the signed work order, bearing Karen's signature as HOA president, authorizing the installation of what she called a decorative community fence. In her eyes, this was meant to serve as a constant reminder of my so-called violations. I immediately called out Karen, demanding an explanation. She replied coolly, "It's under HOA jurisdiction. Perhaps this will finally motivate you to address your violations." At that moment, a mix of fury and disbelief washed over me. I reached out to my lawyer the same day, who confirmed what I had long suspected. While the HOA did have some rights over the community easement, using that authority to block access to a pre-existing, city-approved driveway was almost certainly illegal. But before we could file for an emergency injunction, the fence was already completed, a 6-foot-high wooden barrier that not only blocked my driveway, but also, unbeknownst to Karen, cut off access to the community's main water valve. Now, here's where things get really interesting. The water valve in question was a critical piece of infrastructure that, by city ordinance, needed to remain accessible for emergency services. I decided to let a day pass, waiting for the right moment, and then I called the city water department. They sent an inspector over that afternoon, and he wasn't happy. He explained that the newly installed fence was a serious code violation that could jeopardize emergency access in case of a water main break or even a fire. He warned that unless the fence was removed immediately, the city would start imposing fines, $500 per day, no less. I immediately emailed the entire HOA board, copying all the homeowners in the community. My email was courteous yet firm, explaining the inspector's findings and urging the board to take action to avoid further financial penalties for everyone. By that evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop with texts and calls from fellow neighbors. They were equally outraged, not only by the fence, but by the ongoing abuse of power by our HOA. That same night, an emergency board meeting was convened. Armed with my lawyer, a complete documentation package, including photos, copies of all correspondence, the original community plans, and even statements from the city inspector, I attended the meeting determined to set things right. The room was tense. Karen tried desperately to maintain control, but as each piece of evidence was laid out, it became clear that her authority was crumbling. Bill Henderson, who had been my sole ally up to that point, stood up and moved that the fence be removed immediately, all fines against me be rescinded, and an investigation into the HOA president's conduct be launched. The vote was unanimous, except for Karen, of course. In that charged moment, it became evident that Karen's power trip had finally reached its breaking point.